Misfits and pioneers. I want to check if we have any in the room. So if you would classify yourself as a misfit, can you raise your hand? And if you're a pioneer, can you raise your hand? Brilliant, I'm in the right room, so fantastic. So being a misfit or a pioneer actually does sound as though that means that you're going to be standing alone. It does seem as though it's going to be a lonely place and somewhere that you're going to be on your own. And there's been a recent study which was conducted by Deloitte University, which basically uncovers a trend which seems to be happening, that in order to succeed, that we have become imposters. And this is about what they've termed covering. So covering is when you suppress or try to mask your natural characteristics or your natural instincts in order to succeed at work or succeed in what you do. And this study was conducted amongst 10 different industry sectors, amongst people of different levels, so senior managers, junior people, and of course, different ethnicity and also gender. So again, just a show of hands, in this survey, how many people do you think admitted to covering? So if you think it's 15%, raise your hands. Okay, a couple. If you think it's 27%, 52%, and then finally 61%. Okay. 61% of people admitted to covering, and covering can take all forms of different traits. So that can be appearance-based, so it could be a woman getting up ready to go to work, deciding what to wear and thinking, oh, I can't wear that, I need to wear something which is more masculine. It could be a mum at work, not talking about her family or her children by fear of thinking that that means that she's less committed to her workplace. It could be somebody that's gay, not wanting to bring their partner to a work event in terms of what perceptions that might give. But it isn't just about people that are gay or people who are women or different from an ethnic background. 45% of white, male, straight men also admitted to covering. So this is a concern. So it does mean that if it's 61%, significant proportion of us in this room have covered at some point during our career. And being a misfit and a pioneer means that you can't cover. It means that you have to be true to yourself. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. It's okay to be you, that it's okay to be real, and actually success comes from being authentic. So I have created a series of rules and beliefs. I, in the very early 90s, decided to enter into a career in advertising. And when I entered into that career, this is what the advertising industry looked like. So you had very famous people, such as my boss, Sir Martin Sorrell. You also had people like John Hegarty. You also had people like Maurice Levy. And that's what I was entering into. And I turned up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. So gender reassignment was not an option for me, and neither was skin bleaching. So I couldn't cover my natural appearance at work. But what I had in common with all of these individuals was actually a love of the communications industry, a real love of advertising, a real interest in terms of what makes people tick, what makes people choose one brand or product over another, and also the context in which you talk to people in. That's what made me enter the industry, and ultimately, that's what's helped me be successful in my career, that love and that passion that I had. So I've also been authentic in what I do, and I've tried to keep it real during my career. And in order to do that, I have established a series of beliefs, and there are 8 beliefs that I'm going to talk you through today. So the first belief is to find your own beliefs, because if you take mine from today, you are covering. It means that you are not being yourselves, because your beliefs have to come from who you are and the real you, the person that you are. So find your own beliefs. So who I am the first generation or second generation of Barbadian immigrants into the UK. My mum was a Windrush nurse. My dad came over and worked on the buses for a year, and then he trained to become a BT engineer. So I grew up in a very normal working class family in Reading, just down the road, not too far from here. And whilst I was growing up, my dad had a number of sayings that he said to myself and my sister, but one of them which struck true and remained in my memory was about being black and being female and having to try twice as hard as everybody else. And I remember when I was at school going to see a careers advisor and asking, what are the possible options available to me at school? And the careers advisor, very nice lady, said, well, you could be a nurse or you could be a teacher, both of which are very worthy professions. But there had to be more than two options for me. And those two options came from her stereotype about what she thought I could achieve in the UK. And so my second belief is about acknowledging the situation that you are in, but not letting it define you. So only you know the person that you are, only you know what you could achieve. And it can be difficult because you may have heard for years that you're too short, you're too tall, you're too fat, you're not pretty enough, you're not smart enough. You may have heard that for years, but only you can define how you're going to achieve and how you're going to actually be perceived, not what stereotypes exist. So when I was growing up in Reading and looking for role models, there were a limited number of role models who looked like me on the TV and who were talked about at the time. So when I was growing up, Lenny Henry, Kids TV, Tiz Was, I sort of knew. Trevor McDonald, for years, I thought I was related to because he looked like my dad, and my dad would refer to him as Trev. So I did think, for years, that familiarity meant that he was part of my family. And then I remember in 1987, Diane Abbott being appointed to the Member of Parliament as the Labour Party for Hackney. And I remember being called into the front room by my dad saying, look, you can achieve anything with hard work. And Diane has become a cheerleader for me, and I'll talk about cheerleaders later on. And then I remember the Cosby Show. So the Cosby Show I really remember because it's the first time that you actually saw a middle-class black family where you had the dad who was a doctor and the mum who was a lawyer. And I really remember it, but that was it in terms of role modelling. So covering is about trying to fit in with everybody else. So my next rule was about actually celebrating differences, because what makes you you and what makes you unique should be celebrated, and remembering that. So entering into that world of advertising dominated by public educated white men was going to be difficult for me to try and fit in. But actually I am different, and being remembered for being different was what I wanted to do, and celebrating those differences because I had something to bring to the party. But I actually stand here as a failed athlete because that's what I really wanted to do. So while I was at school, I did lots of athletics. So I was a 100-metre runner, a 200-metre runner, relay and long jump. And my dad, very proud dad, was always at the end of the long jump pit with a camera lens, or he was always at the end of the finishing line, again taking photos. And when those photos got developed, there'd always be, he did it out of a sense of pride, but there'd always be some form of feedback. Well, your stride pattern wasn't quite long enough, and look at that left leg, it could have been a little bit higher. So there was always some form of feedback. And at my agency, I started an apprenticeship programme. And I started the apprenticeship programme to try and increase the diversity in the advertising industry. And one of the things that we have done is actually look at a job swap. So one of the apprentices became CEO for the day, and I actually became an apprentice for the day. And when I was an apprentice for the day, it was going back to the shop floor, and I actually learned and discovered and saw things that I would not see sitting in my office as CEO. So a firm belief has been about being open to feedback and learning, and actually to go looking for it. That's what's kept me real. That's what's kept me authentic. Because I don't care how senior you become, you can always learn. And you should always seek feedback and carry on learning. One of the questions that I'm often asked is whether or not I have faced racism during my career because of the industry which I have entered in and the makeup of that industry. And advertising, you would think, creative industry, quite accepting, quite left field, quite liberal. But I have experienced racism, not directly to my face, but I have experienced it. And I remember when I was doing a pitch trying to win a new client, and we weren't successful, and at that time in my career, I was the account director, so I'm the person that would have led the business if it came into the agency. And we didn't win this piece of business, but it's a small industry, and I knew the people at the other agency that were successful, and I knew the person that was going to be the account director. And they took the new client out for drinks, and as you would do, try to find out about the competition. Well, what did X agency do? What did X agency do? So they asked, what did MediaCom did? And the two male clients, said, oh, actually, MediaCom, they were really good, actually. They were pretty good. But there is no way we would have a female account director, let alone a black one. And that is personal, because that's about me. That's not about the work. That's not about the agency. That is about me. And I would be lying if I said that that didn't hurt me, because of course it did. Now, Maya Angelou had a brilliant, brilliant quote that she said, which was, you can't always affect the events which will happen in your life, but you can decide not to be reduced by them. And that is so true. So there are some things that I can't control. I couldn't control what those people thought of me. I couldn't control their feelings and their perceptions, but I wouldn't let it reduce me. Of course I was upset straight afterwards, of course I was. But covering, and if I'd won that client, it would have meant trying to fit in with that client. And I would have been miserable, and I would have been unhappy. And it is not worth it. We waste too much time and energy trying to fit in and trying to please other people in order to progress. So I'm sure there's a number of men in here that have gone to a golf course and have tried to practice golf and play golf in order to fit in with the management team. Well, secretly you actually hate golf and you don't want to go on that golf course. Stop doing it. If there's anyone in this room covering, stop now. You're just going to make yourself miserable. So what I did, I ditched those people who were not very nice people, and instead I found some cheerleaders. And cheerleaders are people that you need during the course of your life, during the course of your career, that will listen, that will support, and give you the advice that you need to hear. So I ditched those people and I surround myself with cheerleaders. And those cheerleaders can be within the industry sector, and a lot of them are outside the industry sector. So finding those cheerleaders was crucial. But you can only find a cheerleader or be a cheerleader if that person knows you and they need to know the real you. If you are covering, you won't be able to find your cheerleaders. So your cheerleader has to know the real you, which is really important. So there will be times as well during your career where things happen which you don't expect, where things go wrong. And that might not be things that happen within your industry sector. It can be things that happen personally. And my dad, as you may have gathered, big influence on me and the person that I am, and he died very, very suddenly. And it's those cheerleaders that helped get me through. But it's also those cheerleaders that made sure that I was on the right track. So there was a period shortly after my dad died that I got a new job working outside of the UK, so working in Europe, the Middle East and Africa. I met the man of my dreams and I was engaged and I was on a high. I then quickly realised that he was not the man of my dreams and that the only aisle I'll be going down is on a plane. And I then found out I was pregnant, and it was a decision to do it on my own. So I am the single mum to the most beautiful 5-year-old little boy, but it is tough doing a full-time job, running an agency, and being a single mum to a very, very energetic little boy. But what I've had to do is make sure that I ask for help. because I am not Wonder Woman and I am not an island either. So expecting the unexpected, expecting things to go wrong and making sure I ask for help is part of who I am. I could cover, I could try and do it all, I could try and pretend that I'm okay, but actually there are times that I need support and I need those cheerleaders and I need help. So absolutely, my 7th belief or rule is making sure that I ask for help and expect the unexpected, because things don't always go according to plan. So my final belief is really about making sure that you tell the truth and that you have people around you that tell the truth. So most of the people at work seem to think that when I go back to Barbados to see family and friends, that when I get off the plane, there's a ticker tape parade and that there's a statue being erected of me in the middle of Heroes Square in Barbados. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Of course, my family and friends are very proud. Of course they are. But they also remind me that I am Karen, Danny's daughters from Reading, and they are the first people to tell me to wind my neck in if I even think about having an ego. And the picture behind, the incredibly talented Michael Jackson, incredibly talented, who didn't surround himself with people that told him the truth, because if he had, somebody would have told them to stop. So my 8th belief is absolutely about making sure you have those people that do hold up the mirror to you, that do make sure that they tell you the truth and tell you when you're not being the real you. So those are my 8 rules that have helped me be authentic, to help me keep it real, and also to avoid me covering. But those are my 8 beliefs, and as I've said, they have to come from you and they have to come from the person that you are. So my final slide is a quote from Sam Smith. At the age of 22, who's achieved such success in the music industry, in February won 4 Grammys, and I think this says it all. So before I made this record, I was doing everything to try and get my music heard. I tried to lose weight. I was making awful music. It was only until I started to be myself that the music started to flow and people started to listen. He stopped covering, he kept it real, and he achieved success. Thank you very much.